hi, hello, and welcome to episode 24 of the Aussie Role Call podcast. I'm your host, Stevie, and I will be joined for today's interview by Dan. We pivot into culinary escapades as we interview the founder of DTwenty Sauce Co. This episode is where food and nerd spirit commingle and become something stellar and spicy. Dan and I interviewed John about his delicious sauces, process, upcoming product lines, and more. If you've ever wanted to peer into the kitchen of a D&D themed sauce company, and I assume everyone has had that idle dream, this episode is for you. We also have event news, game news, and more, so make sure you stay tuned after the interview. Without further ado, let's jump into that interview with DTwenty Sauce Co. Hey, hi, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Aussie Roll Call podcast. I am one of your hosts, Stevie, and today I am joined by my co-host, Dan.
Hello, hi, how you doing?
And in this episode, we are going to be talking to John from DTwenty Sauce Company. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, John, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hello. I am a self-proclaimed nerd, as someone with nerd tattoos on his arm. I run a hot sauce business based around or themed, inspired by TTRPG games like Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, that's kind of us.
Amazing. And why hot sauces and why TTRPGs? What is this marriage? How did they get merged together? Tell us that story.
As I mentioned before, as a nerd myself, spicy things kind of come naturally. They kind of crave them, that kind of thing. Honestly, through having other friends in the same interests, found that spicy things and nerds kind of go hand in hand. And then through research, I would call playing games with other friends. We found, just people really loved spicy things. So why not blend the two and make a business out of it? With a hospitality background as well, it kind of started out with making sauces for a business and then realized, this could work under a fantasy kind of umbrella.
You have a background in hospitality. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, I have a background in hospitality. I've been working in the industry since 2011, which is over a decade and makes me feel really old. But it means that I've got a bunch of knowledge under my belt, and using that kind of helped develop the sauces as well. So
100%. That's fantastic. So you discovered that you had this overlap in community between people who like spicy things and people who like nerdy things, and particularly Dungeons and Dragons, and you've smashed them together. What has the reception to D20 sauces been like? How have people responded to these sauces? What kind of feedback do you get?
I mean, like, honestly, the people out there like really love the idea. Like, whether it be the flavors or the bottle artwork, like people just kind of seem drawn to it one way or another. And then talking to people, they're just like, this is really delicious sauce. And for us, like, flavor is really important. So providing these hot sauces that are full of flavor and not just spice, and then having the feedback from these people saying that it's fantastic sauce, it's kind of humbling to think about. And like, I'm sure many small businesses have this imposter syndrome that comes through, and like every review, every person we talk to at a market that gives feedback on the sauce, it's really cool to hear that something that we're passionate about, other people are passionate about too.
That's so cool. So I would love to dive in a little bit into your product development process, I guess. Like, how do you come up with the combinations of flavors that you do, and how do you pair them with a name and the artwork? Because the name and the artworks are often what stand out to people first. They look at the label and they're drawn to the wonderful imagery that you have on the labels. So can you talk a little bit about that process? Is it the character idea that comes first, or is it the flavor profile of the sauces that comes first?
I mean, it's a mix of everything. Like, sometimes I go into it with a character in mind and the flavor comes after that. But then other times it's the flavor comes first, where it's like, oh, what if I tried this chili with this flavor? did some experimenting with it. And then once I have that flavor profile, then the character comes after that. So, for example, one of the sauces I'm working on at the moment, um, I had a rough idea of like, okay, I want this kind of like spooky, like shade almost character where it's like a really dark, you don't really know who it is sort of thing. And then from that, the flavor kind of developed where I was like, okay, I want it to be dark. So looking at using black cocoa powder for that dark kind of aspect. But then that got me thinking about, okay, what kind of chili works with cocoa, but I don't want it to be too strong. So then in a weird way, it just kind of flows on from that initial idea.
From wherever the starting point was, you kind of like branch out and follow those threads.
Exactly.
I really love that. Do you have so with your artwork, do you do that yourself or do you have an artist?
Believe me, as someone who has both a diploma and an advanced diploma in visual arts, I can't draw for shit. So um,
The truth comes out.
it does come out. So in that regard, we commission someone because why not help someone else out at the same time? So we come to them with our ideas and like rough sketches because believe me, they're rough. They come to them with those ideas and then they put them together for us. And yeah, like I said, we've commissioned them, so it helps out their small business as well. And then we can utilize them for our sources.
Just to pick my favorite. So you got the garlic chipotle. You've got the artwork of a necromancer goblin on the front, which is, it absolutely drew me in as the reason why it's my favorite. So yeah, it's really great to have this beautiful artwork of this cheeky little goblin clearly in the middle of casting a spell, combined with the sauce itself.
Absolutely. And with that and all of our artwork, one of the reasons why we went with this artist is for that real drawn look about them, like they've come jumped off like a page in a book kind of thing, where it really lends itself to that fantasy genre. The fact that our labels kind of look a bit like character sheets in that way, and I feel like the artwork that is there really supplements that.
Yeah, it does for sure. The labels have a very strong visual identity and they do, I feel, mesh very well with that hand-drawn tabletop texture almost feeling. So that's wonderful to hear that that was very intentional, I guess, when you were seeking this particular artist. So that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had clearly a few commissions from him already, and we're planning to do a few more. We've got some ideas in the works, so see where it goes from there.
That is super exciting. Now, in terms of like your range, you've got like a very wide range of, I guess, heat profiles in your hot sauces. What are your? I'm going to ask you a culinary question, I guess. What is your favorite chili to work with, and why?
I'm gonna say habanero chilies, mainly because they're like versatile. Like you can use them in small amounts, like in our honey mustard and habanero sauce, the honey healer, where it has that nice burn to it without being overpowering. But then you can also essentially increase the heat through the amount of chilies you use, and then you can make I would say a mid to hot range sauce, like a passion fruit and habanero.
I love that one.
Oh, it's so good, right?
The
We've got someone
acidity
who,
of the passion fruit with the habanero and that slight sweetness is so good.
oh, yeah, like we've got one guy who that is the only sauce he buys from us in the 200 mils. Just every market, he's just like another one, another one. Honestly, surprised he doesn't chug this stuff at this point.
Well, if repeat customers aren't testimony to how great your sauces are, I don't know what is. But in terms of developing, I guess, that range of heat profiles, how do you work out where things sit? Because I imagine you're probably at this point pretty not particularly sensitive to chili heat. Do you have like testers who tell you this one's not very spicy, this one is very spicy? How do you come up with that rating system?
Yeah, very difficultly. Yeah, that's a word. Yeah, my brain's working. It's a mixture of testing ourselves, testing amongst our friends as well, getting feedback on that. So, recent example of that is the chutney range that we just launched. The the tomato chutney, we were playing around with that for a little while too, whether or not to put spice in it. And at the end of the day, we decided to do a mild and a spicy version. But in the testing phase, I made a couple of different batches of that and got my friends to try it. And it's one of those where you test it amongst a few people so you can kind of get that rough average. And then you put a rough average heat level on it. So it's honestly one of the most difficult parts is coming up with that because like I was saying before, based on the chilies, it's just like, okay, if you use a little bit, then it might not be super hot. But then if you use a few more, it might be a lot hotter. But then figuring out, is this a 6 or is this an 8? And just kind of splitting the difference sometimes.
So it's a
and
bit
that
of an art,
feedback
a bit of a science.
a little bit, yeah. And having friends who give you constructive criticism really helps as well. So very thankful to them.
It's good to have good friends. Awesome. So this chutney range, I don't think I've heard about the chutney range. Maybe I am a little bit out of the loop. I think the last market I saw you folks at was, I want to say the St Kilda TTRPG market,
Yes.
which was
Okay.
a while ago. I think that might have been before the chutneys
Yes.
came along.
The chutneys are fairly recent, yes.
Tell me about the chutneys, because I do love chutneys. Tell me what's in this range.
Okay.
Because I need to prepare my wallet for conquest, so just tell me
Yes.
how much this is going to hurt my wallet.
Not as much as you'd think, but we have brought to the table 4 different chutneys. So, as I mentioned, we've got a tomato chutney that we've released in both a mild version, or rather a no spice version, and a spicy version that contains Carolina Reapers,
Ooh.
which, like, it's one of those where the chilies just play really well with the tomatoes, and we wanted to have this available for people to try whether they like spice or not spice. So that's why we made the 2 different heat levels of that. The other 2 chutneys in this range, one is a pineapple jalapeno. So it's a very mild chutney. It's quite sweet. It's I would say it's got those tropical vibes, charred pineapple kind of vibes. Great on burgers, that kind of stuff. There is coriander in there, and I know that's not for everyone, but through the experimenting, it just that note of coriander just really flowed with the pineapple and the jalapenos. And then the other chutney we've got, which my housemate can't stop eating, so every time I make some, I've got to make extra
It's a double
jars,
batch.
is a mango habanero. So
Ooh.
if you're looking at the 4 sauces, you've got the mild tomato chutney, then the next step up is the pineapple jalapeno, and then the mango habanero is kind of that mid-range heat. Very strong mango flavors. You get that right up front, and then the habanero heat kicks in on the afterburns. So heat-wise, I would say it's around that passion fruit habanero level of the sauce that we make. But we figured the chutneys were kind of like the next logical step in the condiment range, and they all come in 190 gram jars, so you get a decent amount for what you buy them for. So yeah, really proud of them. Had some great comments already. Like I said, they're a recent release, so we took them to our last market, and we should have taken more because we sold out of basically all of them by the end of the day, which is fantastic.
Yes, quality problem to have.
Exactly. Yes, we are definitely stocking up to have more of them for Conquest at the end of the month. But yeah, really proud of them, and did a lot of experimenting. So I'm glad they're at the point that they are now.
That is so cool to hear.
So, in terms of, so you got the chutneys, you got the sauces. What would be the next steps for you?
So we're playing around with dehydrating chilies, but also working on that kind of spice mix, like seasoning, salt rubs, that kind of vibe. So
Oh.
basically stuff that you can add to your food to add, whether that be heat or flavor without necessarily adding liquid in the form of sauce or chutney to it. So that's still very much in the testing phase. But one of the reasons why we want to do that is that through making some of the sauces, we usually end up with what's better known as like chili mash or chili pulp, essentially. And rather than waste that, we've been experimenting with dehydrating that. And then once that's dried out, blending it into a powder, and found that there is a significant amount of A, heat, and B, flavor in that. So we've been playing around with making spice mixes and like salt rubs, I guess is the best term for that. Yeah, and realizing that this byproduct that would otherwise be wasted can be utilized in a fantastic way to extend our product line.
That is really cool. I love the waste reduction, and more products is fantastic. And that's a really great extension, and I think a natural extension to your current product line. Now, I imagine, and this is probably just like my own headcanon, John, that you have like a recipe book that kind of looks like a chaotic wizard's spell book with like various sheafs of paper stuffed in there with like all of the sacred recipes of the D20 Sauce Co. all collated, and you wander around with it sort of like clutched to your chest. Do you have like a system where you do all of your experimenting and then finalizing of the recipes? Is there like I guess, some sort of spell book that adventurers could go and perhaps try and obtain nefariously or otherwise?
I mean, if it's playing by Minecraft rules, I'm sure if you knocked me out, I'd just drop it on the floor and it'd float there. But yeah, you're not far off. A lot of the experimenting is very hand scrolled, just kind of trying to jot things down as I'm like playing around with stuff. Because in the early days, I didn't do that, and trying to remember what I put into this sauce that I was trying to make didn't go so well.
You can't repeat the results if you don't have them written down.
Especially if you end up using the wrong chili because you remembered the wrong chili and then it turns out being 10 times hotter than it was supposed to be. Yeah, early testing days of the cherry lime reaper sauce we make. It was not fun on the old taste buds. But yeah, so basically the recipes, like for the range that I have a set recipe that I've, experimented on a few times to perfect to that point. And now that I'm happy with it, I've basically, through the use of Excel, basically have that all there, so that way I can look at the costings. I can easily bump up the recipe if I need to make a big batch for, markets and things. So it initially was lots of hand-drawn scrolls and that sort of stuff and little pieces of paper shoved into a folder. But now it's a nice little display folder with all typed up and easy to read. It's fantastic.
That sounds so
But it's
cool.
mine and you can't have it.
Ah,
I just love the idea of like a wizard just getting sick of their own scrolled notes and just getting some intern to type it up nicely and in display format.
that would be so cool and amazing. John, tell us about some of the markets that you've been to. What have been some of your favorite markets to attend, and why?
Obviously going to start with the first market that I did. I believe it was Conquest last year, because we've only been doing markets for a short time.
Yeah, and I think the first Conquest market was 2024, so...
And it was a whirlwind. Like, we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know how much sauce to bring, but we set up our table, set up our booth, and then one after another, we just were under the pump all day, and it was fantastic. It was exhausting, but it was also very humbling to see how many people were just interested in trying something. I definitely think the free samples of tasters definitely helped, but
I
that's,
mean...
you gotta get them hooked in.
Exactly, the first one's free, right?
Exactly. But it's very fond because obviously you always remember your first, and it was like, because we'd been selling exclusively online before that, and doing that, we're like, okay, this is something we can do more of, and this is a great way of getting our name and our sources out there and giving people a chance to try them as well.
100%, because I know from my personal experience, I hadn't heard of you folks until I saw you at that first Conquest market, and then I was like, oh my god, I need more of these in my life because of the reasons that you've just spoken of. You get to try them, you get to try all the flavors that are there, and you get to buy them on the spot, you get to meet the people who make them. How have you found that transition going from being a purely online store to doing markets? Have you seen an upwards trend in like your connections with community and sales? Has there been like a positive correlation?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier about the guy who just gets the passion fruit habanero sauce. Like, we've got customers that repeat come back or that we purely see at markets, and it's like you said, a very community based thing. Like, it's fantastic to see these people addicted probably isn't the best word, but basically coming
Fans.
back. Fans, yes, let's go with that.
Excessive fans.
Fans of the sauce coming back regularly to get sauce for themselves, but also to help support us as well. And it does, like, initially it was like, okay, how do we make sure that we doing these markets and that sort of stuff. And like, there was a few markets that we didn't hear about until they were actually happening. And typically with markets, they have an application period a month or two before the market happens. And so we missed out on a lot of them. But through doing more of them, we're realizing that selling online is now becoming the secondary, where we're doing these markets. People are hearing about us, trying the sauces, maybe buying a bottle or two, but then after they've finished those bottles, then they're coming to the online stores. Or, like I said, they're coming back to markets to pick them up in person. So yeah, it's been great, and definitely have more markets on the horizon because we enjoy doing it. We enjoy talking to people, and yeah, really just selling our sauce and seeing that people love it. So
That is so cool to hear. Now, we have been speaking about markets and things that are coming up on the horizon. Can you tell us about what is happening in the not too distant future for D20 Sauce Company?
amongst more markets, so we have touched on it a few times. Conquest is at the end of this month, month of August. So that will be a full day event for us, bringing plenty of our new items as well.
Learn from last year's mistakes, I see.
Exactly. Yeah. People really love the honey mustard sauce, and I don't blame them because I have like a 2 liter bottle in my pantry.
See, now that's just rude because you don't sell 2 liter bottles of your
Yeah, I
sauces.
was gonna say.
If I sold them, then I can't have them in my pantry. So
That just sounds like a problem of scale, John.
Yeah.
Look, to be fair, one of the reasons why I started this was because of my addiction to hot sauce. So I feel like
I see who patient zero is. I understand now.
exactly. But yes, so Conquest, and then immediately following that, the day after, in fact, I am doing a smaller market in Footscray. There's a small Dungeons Dragons themed cabaret show that's happening, and they are running a small market there that we were a part of last year, but we're joining in this year. So
That's going to be a very big weekend for you.
it will be.
I hope you've
and
booked
I
a
just
foot
hope,
massage for afterwards, because
I mean, a foot massage and enough bottles to make sure I've got plenty of stock. Those are the most immediate things. We've got 1 or 2 markets later on in the year, but they're not certain yet, so I'm not going to say anything. But the other thing we're working on is trying to get some of our sauces into venues, rather like stockists, that kind of thing. So we're working on something at the moment that I can't actually talk about until it happens. But if you're looking for places to pick up our sauces that aren't just markets, and you don't want to buy from us online, yes, we will have them in places soon.
that's amazing. Will you be listing physical stockists on your website when they come through?
Yes, absolutely. And we'll be making a lot of noise on our socials about it too, because it's a very exciting opportunity. And it's also going to keep me very busy, because keeping stock of those stockists is another thing. So
Amazing. I know you don't get a lot of chances or opportunities to play tabletop games at the moment, John, but think back to a time or times when you have done for these fast 5 questions. If you could have any gaming table snack, what do you think the best one is to have at the table?
I'm a sucker for like candy snakes. There's just something about them that just throws me back to being a kid and just eating handfuls of them. So having them as a table snack, so I can, like, gradually, like, I don't know if this is TMI, but gradually have one hanging from my mouth and just chew on it as I'm playing. Just having that little sweet hit. Yeah.
Yeah. Tapping into those childhood memories. I love that nostalgia. Now, do you have a favorite dice, like dice size? So like D20, D8s, D6s, or even a favorite dice set of your own?
We can kind of have a given of the the D20 is definitely the favorite dice.
Mhm.
Case in point of the name. But dice set, I recently commissioned a set from Ravensridge Emporium. They're Queensland based. And so they took my idea of basically putting chili flakes into a dice set. Basically,
That
kind of
sounds
like
cool.
fire ember thing. And yeah, honestly, it's sitting on my desk and it is very pretty to look at, even more pretty in the sunlight. So
Spicy rolls. I love that. That is so cool. Now, do you have a favorite tabletop game to introduce new players to? So you've got someone who's never played any kind of tabletop game before. What game would you first introduce them to?
unsure if it is classed as a tabletop game because I don't know how much of it actually takes part on a table. But it's this one where you throw a burrito. I think it's quite literally called burrito or something like that.
Mhm.
Where
Yes.
yeah, you have to throw a burrito at each other. And I mean, who doesn't love burritos? But I don't know. There's just something chaotic about it, and it's really new player friendly in that way, where you're just having a bit of fun throwing around a burrito at each other. So
It's called Throw Burrito.
okay, look, I wasn't far off.
Look, there seems to be a theme of spicy hot sauces. Burritos also can be spicy.
And they can be more spicy with hot sauce.
They can be. I am sensing a theme here. Now, so you've got your lollies, you've got your your snakes, you've got your favorite dice set, you've got a copy of Throw Burrito. What else do you think you need to have to make like the tabletop experience, just taking it to that next level?
Can I be selfish here? Honestly, and not a sponsor, hoodies or those oversized hooded jumper things, they are so cozy, so warm, and I just so snuggled up in them. It's just I can't. Like I play video games like that. Like
They're good
it's just
hibernation
peak
wear.
comfort.
Yeah, tell us we're filming. Well, we're recording this in the middle of August without telling us we're recording this in the middle of August. I crave warmth and comfort. Now, final question. If you could have a companion or a minion, like an animal or a robot, kind of like a familiar in D&D, what would it be?
I don't know if you're familiar with Italian greyhounds.
Yes.
Okay, they are very silly little dogs, but like having like a little Italian greyhound with his silly little head and his silly butt. I don't know. It's just something about it. I just have to have one next to me at all times. Just yeah.
Goofy
Italian
little
greyhound. That's my answer.
shivering. I love it.
Would you have one that could talk though?
Oh, absolutely. And it did have this like really just obnoxiously deep voice. like way out of character, that kind of just like, hello, how are you? Like that kind of just throw everyone off. Yeah.
I love that. Now, before we let you go, John, where can people go if they want to find out more about D20 Sauce Co?
Well, we have our website, which is self-titled at d20sauceco.com.au. We also have socials amongst Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and, all the things, various things under D20 Sauce Co. You can find us there.
Wonderful. And for everyone, that is the letter D followed by the word 20, so TWENTY Sauce Co. So the 20 is spelled out. Amazing. Well, we look forward to seeing all of the stockists when they eventually start filtering through and all of the other exciting things coming up for you guys. It has been wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. It was so fun.
Thanks so much, John.
Thanks, John.
Do you want to try Daggerheart but aren't quite ready to make the commitment of buying the rule set? And do you live in Melbourne and around? Well, Masters of Alchemy are hosting games of Daggerheart at Moondog Wild West as part of their event Quest in the West on the 21st of August. This is the perfect way to try the system with an experienced game master. Plus, if Daggerheart isn't really your thing, they're also running games of D&D. I'll pop a link to where you can buy tickets to that event in the show notes. In indie Aussie TTRPG release news, Razer has released a quick start version of her Fleet Command TTRPG, Assault Fleet Centauri. This new release serves as the debut outing of the game's new rule system. AFC is a tactical RPG where the key to victory is thinking like your character would. It's a game where system mastery is achieved through setting mastery. I'll pop a link to where you can find that game in the show notes. Back in episode 22, Kate and I interviewed G of D, who spoke about her time on the Castleton campaign with AJ Winters. Well, Castleton is getting its own setting book. They will be launching a Kickstarter for the Castleton setting book on the 7th of October, and I'll pop a link to the announcement in the show notes. And finally, as was mentioned in the interview with John from D20 Sauce Company, the Conquest Games Market is coming up very soon on Saturday, the 30th of August, 2025. Doors will open to the public at 10 a.m, and that will be at the Coburg Town Hall. And that is all I have for this episode.
Some people have been asking us what the best thing they can do is to support the podcast. And honestly, it's rating and reviewing it wherever you're listening to it. It really does help us reach brand new audiences and other listeners just like you. TTRPGs are for everybody, and we want to reach as many people as possible. No matter where you're from, we want you to be part of the discussion, part of the roll call here at Aussie Role Call.
This podcast is produced in affiliation with the Australian roleplay community. If you'd like to join the ARC community, head to arcrpg.org, where you'll find a link to our vibrant and inclusive Discord server. Your hosts have been Kate O'Sullivan, Dan Machuca, and Stevie Schaefer. Cover art by Helen Graham of Juimon Studios. Title music is Sweet Sunday Groove by Slailkey. Interstitial music is Newer Wave by Kevin MacLeod, used under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. Production by Stevie Schaefer.